After taking 10 years off away from baseball and spending my first season back letting ChatGPT rebuild my swing, I could tell that I was close to a breakthrough, but I still wasn't quite happy with my swing. So I decided to take the next 3 months and close the gap to get my swing to an elite level. And I'm happy to say the results have been fantastic. But it begs the question, what happened after I let ChatGPT rebuild my swing? Hello everyone, this is Bryce on Balls, where I talk about my baseball journey in the hopes of helping you on yours. Today, I want to talk about what I've been doing for the last 3 to 4 months to perfect my swing technique to an elite level after letting ChatGPT rebuild it all last season. The main problem I was seeing with my swing was the fact that I wasn't quite hitting as effectively as I wanted to, and I wasn't getting any power. I had a successful season. I led the team in RBIs, I led the team in stolen bases, and I was second in the league in stolen bases. And I hit a respectable 261, but I could tell that there were still some changes I needed to make. And to do that, I discovered a new tool by WinReality called SwingAI. They're not a sponsor of this video, they're not paying me to talk about this, but I felt the need to be honest with you guys as to what I've been doing with my swing as of late. And I'm happy to say that my swing is much more effective now and looks more like an elite major league swing. So in this video, we'll talk about what my swing looked like at the end of last season after I let ChatGPT rebuild it. We'll talk about the changes to my technique that SwingAI recommended that I do. And we'll then talk about what my swing looks like as of today, as well as the adjustments I needed to make in order to get to that point. Because, as I've said before, technique is everything. If you don't have good technique, you can only get so far. So for those of you who don't know, SwingAI is an AI tool used by WinReality in order to be basically a hitting coach, but virtually. You take your swing, you upload it to SwingAI, it will then process that video, and it will then give you a score from 1 to 100, and it will give you feedback and drills as to how to improve your swing. So, this is what my swing looked like the first time I ever uploaded it to SwingAI. Now, as I said, I was getting no power out of my swing, and the other thing was I wasn't really hitting any balls above my belt, but anything in the lower half of the zone I could get to pretty easily. If I recall correctly, when I uploaded the swing, it gave me about a 75 or 78, I can't remember off the top of my head. And given the symptoms that I had discussed earlier, I could tell that a change was needed, so I let SwingAI give me some feedback. So there are two big main pieces of feedback that SwingAI gave me. First of which, I basically wasn't loading with my pelvis at all. When I was young, I was always taught that you load with your shoulders. However, that's only part of the equation. You are, in fact, supposed to load with both your pelvis and your shoulder, otherwise you're going to leave a tremendous amount of power on the table. Although, as SwingAI pointed out, I was loading well with my shoulders, that really only contributed to about 20% of my power. The other 80% came from loading with my pelvis and my shoulders together. That way it really gets your lower and half involved. The second thing it pointed out to me was the fact that I didn't really have the proper hip-shoulder separation at contact, or really foot down either. What that really means is that I wasn't utilizing the kinetic chain or the kinematic sequence effectively, and my hands were actually outrunning my lower body, which again kills power. Now, the kinetic chain is a topic that lies outside the scope of this video. I encourage you to go ahead and look it up to know what it is, but basically it's the chain of events that occurs to generate power appropriately while you're hitting, which means you use the ground first by using your legs, then using your hips, then using your upper body in that order to generate the most power efficiently. So for the next 2 to 3 months, I had spent just about every single day uploading 10 different swings to SwingAI and incorporating those two pieces of feedback slowly over time to get my swing all the way consistently up into the 90s. Out of the two things that I focused on, it was really easy for me to correct my pelvis load. That just made the most sense to me. That was a concept that wasn't too foreign to me. Okay, yeah, load your pelvis, coil into your back hip. That's something that just came naturally to me. Although it came naturally for me to understand, it took me a little while to implement fully into my swing. And there is such a thing as coiling and loading with your pelvis a little bit too much, and it took me a while to really strike the balance of loading with my pelvis too much, not enough, just the right amount. So it took me a good month or so to really narrow that down. But once I did, my score jumped up pretty significantly because several other factors of my swing that SwingAI pointed out fell into place. So after working on the pelvis load for about 4 to 6 weeks, I decided to really hone in on the kinematic sequence portion. The goal was that I wanted to properly learn to slam my heel down right as I'm swinging so that I could really generate power effectively. Let me back up for a second. So when I was letting ChatGPT rebuild my swing, the one thing I always had trouble with was the fact that it always talked about slamming my heel down first whenever I go to swing. And I never really understood why it was giving me that feedback. Come to find out, with the help of SwingAI, was that it was trying to get me to adhere to the kinetic sequence. So I had to learn what exactly the kinematic sequence was, how it worked in a baseball swing, things along those lines before I could implement it. Because when I was young, I was never really taught hitting biomechanics, so the entire concept was pretty foreign to me, and it's something I encourage you all to get a general understanding of. So that is why I attacked it second. So basically, to correct the feedback that SwingAI had given me about my hands outrunning my legs and not adhering to the kinematic sequence, I decided to really practice slamming my heel down first when I was going to swing. This was by far the hardest adjustment I've ever had to make to my swing in my entire life. When you're just kind of going up there and swinging as hard as you can, and when you're building habits for as long as I have, adhering to a new concept entirely was just really tough. It's like trying to learn a new language as an adult. It's just really tough when you're already as old as I am. So I would say that this took me about 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, to really hone in on. However, once I understood that slamming my heel down first and exploding with my lower half out of it and letting the rest of my body follow it quickly, everything seemed to fall into place. I was creating the proper amount of hip and shoulder separation at foot down and at contact, and that way I use my power extremely efficiently. And after months of grinding my nose and really uploading as many swings as I could to SwingAI and just getting it as close to consistently not perfection as humanly possible, I finally scored my first 99. After doing this for a couple months, I felt this sense of pride that I have been working on my swing very diligently for the last year, and now I had finally gotten it to an elite level. So now that I knew that my swing was capable of being elite, the next thing that I've been working on from that moment forward, it's been about 2 months since that happened, I've just been worked on being consistent. And I'm happy to say that I have given it a ton of practice, and now it is very rare where I upload my swings to SwingAI and I don't score in the 90s. So basically, ChatGPT only got me so far, but I needed a tool like SwingAI that I could use on demand as much as I wanted to get me to more of an elite level, which is the biggest lesson I've learned in this entire experience over the last year of re-engineering my swing. So with all that out of the way, this is what my swing looks like as of last week.
The Mets not made so many promises just to get me to.
You can see here that I am loading slowly and intentionally with both my pelvis and my shoulder at the same time. You will also notice that I explode that front heel down into the ground as quickly as possible to start my swing. And immediately, right when my heel lands, my hips and my upper body follow it. It goes your lower body, your hips, and then your torso in that order to adhere to the kinematic sequence. However, they are so close together in this video that you might not even notice it. And that, I think, is the indicator that you know that you're doing it right, is when they look so close together that you hardly notice. Because there is also such a thing as getting too much hip shoulder separation at foot down and at contact, because if you reach too much, you're also leaving power on the table. However, if you do it too close together, you run into my original problem where your hands match too close to your lower body. So much like with my pelvis load, where I had to figure out what was too much and too little, I also had to figure out how much hip shoulder separation was too much or too little. And you'll also notice in this video that I stay on plane way better than I used to. Granted, in my original swing that I showed you guys, I was on a tee, and you can't really match plane when you're on a tee. Nevertheless, my swing looks a lot more smooth, a lot more dynamic, and a lot more powerful. Because this is what happened in the 3 to 4 months after I let ChatGPT rebuild my swing. I discovered that my swing wasn't where it needed to be, and I trusted my intuition to lean on new tools such as SwingAI to get me to a more elite level. Because at the end of the day, technique is king, and when you have really good technique, you're gonna have a lot better results on the field, you'll swing a lot harder, and you'll use your body a lot more efficiently. And this is going to be a prelude for a new series where I'm going to talk about how I'm trying to improve my bat speed. This will tie together everything I've talked about with rebuilding my swing, letting AI help me design a baseball off-season training plan, and just trying to be as good of a baseball player as I possibly can be. So if you guys are interested in that, I would love and be honored if you would watch that video series as it comes out. It will be coming out here in the next month or so. If you have made it to this point, thank you so much for watching. I want to know, how are you refining your technique? How's your technique today? What tools are you using to help? Are you using a hitting coach? Maybe use SwingAI on your own as well. Whatever it is, I would love to know in the comments. But until then, I've been Bryce. This has been Bryce on Balls. And as always, have a great day.